Hello, hello. My name is Christian, and today I'm here to bring you my blindfold solve method. I call it the POP method. It stands for the parallel old Pochmann method. So it's an extension of the core concept of how old Pochmann works. So if you're familiar with how old Pochmann works, then you should be able to follow along just fine. But anyways, we got a lot to cover, so let's dive right in. So, the POP method. What it is essentially is, with old Pochmann, you are taking some PLLs to shoot your pieces that you want to put in place from a preset buffer position to another spot on the top layer by use of a PLL, with setup moves before and then undoing the setup move after. So with my method, and then you do it with your edges and then you do your corners. So with the POP method, or the parallel old Pochmann method, what you're going to be doing is essentially solving both your corners and your edges at the same exact time. Now, with that being said, the advantages of that would be that you have a significant reduction of the amount of moves that you would need to do. Because you're not having to do your edges and your corners separately, and you're using PLLs to solve both cycles at the same time. You will, in the end, not need to use as many PLLs to get through the solve. So the execution as a result will be a little bit faster. Another advantage is the fact that you will get no parity state. So in classic old Pochmann, if you have an odd number of either edge or corner cycles, you will have an odd number of the other. And so as you're swapping between your two cycle positions, that you are just swapping as you put your other edges into place. If you end on an odd number of cycles, then those corner pieces will be swapped, and you'll need to use a parity alg to fix that. Well, since you're doing both the corners and the edges at the same time, even if there's an odd number of cases for your edges and then for your corners as well, you will always, by the time you are finished with your corners, you will always end with an even number of cycles afterwards, eliminating the need for a parity algorithm. And then the other advantage being that because it is based off of old Pochmann, we are utilizing PLLs in order to do it. So if you could do a 3x3, then you have all the tools that you need in order to be able to execute this method. The cons of it is one of the biggest cons actually is that it is difficult to memo. The memorization, because of the fact that you have to memorize all your edge sequence, all your edge cycles, and then afterwards memorize your corner cycles, and then execute them at the same time. So you start with the first one of your edge, the first corner, solve both of those, and then you move on to the second pair, and then the third pair. So you have to kind of overlap the memorization. I've come up with a way that I've used in order to memorize, and we'll go over that when we kind of get to that point. But it can be a little bit difficult, but with practice it gets a little bit easier. The setup moves can be complicated, but yes and no. They can be complicated due to the fact that you're having to move two pieces for your setup move, but at the same time, we are opening up the top layer a lot and unlocking a lot of the potential places that we could slot to, and because of the freedom that we have, we could usually actually get a pretty low count. So that is kind of a con, but at the same time, not really, because it kind of self-corrects. But the biggest con of this method is it's still at its core based off of old Pochmann, and it is in itself inefficient because you're using an entire PLL just to move, you know, a few pieces when you could do things like, you know, 3-cycle commutators, M2, turbo. I mean, there's a handful of blindfold methods out there that would be much better than that, but they do require a lot of mental investment and studying and stuff like that. They are can be a little bit to, you know, digest. So if you're looking to just kind of improve your blindfold solves a little bit without getting too deep into stuff, or you are just maybe looking to fine-tune and maybe get a little bit better at old Pochmann itself, because even if you don't fully adopt the whole solving both your corners and the edges at the same time, there are still going to be things, some tools that you will gain from this that will help your setup moves and stuff like that, and your execution times on just your, you know, your classic old Pochmann solves. So yeah, there's that. But you know, I think the best way to explain this method and to really kind of dive into it would be to do an example solve and with a scramble and stuff like that, and kind of walk through it together and show you how exactly this method is executed. And yeah. So I have here on the screen the scramble that I have already prepared here on the cube. Actually, I have it on both of them just in case. And so the way it works is, you know, with old Pochmann, you know, you typically use a T-perm and a Y-perm to shoot from one place to another. So, you know, you have your buffer position and you have your target position, right? And typically you use a T-perm for every single edge. But, you know, like some of the setup moves that can actually be kind of tricky. For instance, let's say, for instance, we were trying to shoot this piece here using a T-perm to this position here. And, you know, using a T-perm, we're going to be shooting this piece there, right? So we have to get this piece, this face here. Well, you know, the only way really to do that would be to, like, you know, we can move it, you know, to the front here, and then we'll maybe do a L wide to make it face down, and then a D to get it over here, and then L2 to get it to the top. That's quite a few moves. I don't know. Maybe there's a little bit faster way to do it, but you know, I don't. That's about as fast as I can think right now. But what if we were to use not just T-perms, but what if we were to use, you know, what if we were to shoot to there instead? Maybe there might be a better setup move if we shot to this position there, and it might be easier to get this into this position, or that position for that matter. You know, you still want to make sure you're maintaining cycling your corners and your T-perm, so that way, you know, that doesn't get mixed up. But, you know, there's no reason, you know, there's no reason that we have to shoot across and use a T-perm. You know, we could just as well shoot to any of these other positions and use the J-perm. And, you know, if we think about it that way, then this piece here, right, we could just rotate it, bam, put it right there, and then just that. And then execute the J-perm, and then your undo move is that. So that was like 2 moves there. So that's kind of the concept with this, except for we're doing the corners at the same time. So yeah, let's get into the solve here. As you can see on the screen, I actually already have the edge cycles and the corner cycles figured out, because, you know, I didn't want to have to memo that on the recording here. So if we were to just take a look at that here, and then I've also provided here this kind of letter key, and this is the memo key that I personally use. So if you hear me talking about, a position, or my edge is going to A, then we're talking about, in the up face, this back, piece here, or, maybe S is right here. So yeah, if you just refer to this here for following along with the solve here. But in this particular scramble, our edge cycle starts at K, which is back here. We have the green red. So these two here is where my buffer positions are going to be. These are where I'm going to be shooting my pieces from. And then so we could utilize any of these pieces here to shoot our pieces to, whatever's easiest for us in order. The only requirement for our setup moves is that we don't interrupt these two pieces, so we could, pretty much move anything that won't mess these up. And then, we just want the faces in the top face here. So, so this green-red will shoot to here, right? Between the green and red, and that is the K position. And then that one is a white-green, so that one's going to come down here, and that's U. And we could see if we follow along here. We got K, U, and then it goes the red, white comes over to the red, white over here in the R, and then so on and so forth down the line. And then we have our corner cycles here. Starting with A, so from this position, if this is our corner buffer, this yellow, red, green piece is just going to come right over here in our A position, and we can see that here. And then it's going to go I and P and T, and then the little slashes indicate a new cycle. So that's where you get to the point where you end up back either at your your buffer position piece, or so you have to start a new cycle. So in typical old Pochmann, you would do your edges first and then do your corners, or vice versa. But at the end of the day, you would have 12 edge cycles to do and 8 corner cycles to do. 20 PLLs total that you would have to execute, plus setup moves. Well, with this method, since we're doing it at the same time, we will only have 12 PLLs we will have to execute. So we could see here already that, as far as move count reduction from classic old Pochmann, we're getting down there, almost half. Not quite, but almost. But anyways, so let's go ahead. Oh, actually, before we get into the solve, I wanted to talk a little bit about the memo system that I use for this, and the way that I get both my edges and my corners paralleled on top of each other. And that is by, I start with the edges, and I start with so what I use is I use a noun adjective system. So all my edges, the letters correspond to a noun, and then afterwards, as I'm memoing my corners, I recite in order my edge cycles, and then I just attach an adjective to that said noun, so that way the corner kind of has a mental association with that edge. For example, if I was memoing this, K might be, kangaroo, U, umbrella, R, reindeer, E, elephant. And then once I got, and then, so on and so forth. And then once we got to the corners, it might look something like, apron, for lack of things. I might think of a kangaroo wearing an apron, and then that way, I know that's not an adjective, so please don't flame me. I just couldn't think of a good adjective on the spot here. I should have prepared like a preset phonetic corresponding, but whatever. It's okay. We're doing it on the fly. We're all good. So like a kangaroo with an apron, that is actually a good mental image that would stick, and that speaks to both the corner and the edge piece together. So that way we, when you're going through your execution, you could, recite that, or, recall that on the fly. And then, And then you'd make those corner edge associations as you memo, and then once you get to the end, once you're done with all your corners, you'll just be left with always an even number of edge cycles left. And what you do at that point is you just execute it like you would normal Ode Pochmann. You could pick any two corners to cycle back and forth. Just make sure you're consistent for the remainder of your edge cycles and those PLLs that you're doing for those. But as long as you make sure that you're remaining consistent, whether or not you revert back to classical Pochmann and just do T-perm straight all the way through the end, or mix it up with some J's to help you with some better setup moves. Either way. But anyways, let's get into the solve here to kind of demonstrate how we would actually do this. So our first edge and corner association is K and A. So the black letters here on my my face chart here are all the edges, as you can see, and then the reds the corners. So we have a K edge, which is back here, and then we have an A corner, which is right here. So the A is actually already in the U face, but we would just have to figure out a way to also get the edge piece as well. So, man, I should have thought about these beforehand. Actually, we could do it like this. So if we do, since this is already facing up and we just have to worry about this one, and remember, we don't want to interrupt these here because these are our buffer positions, we'll go ahead and we'll just do a D prime or D wide prime, right? So now our face is here, and then we'll do an F prime. So now our piece is here. So now our two pieces that were our two target pieces that were our target faces that we're shooting to is our corners here and our edges here. So if we go to this little chart here, these are going to be all the PLLs that we'll possibly have to use shooting from these corner positions or edge positions. So since we need to come to this corner here and this edge, we just look for that here in the chart. And here we have, so we're going to need to execute the PLL, the RA. And hold please. Ooh, it's not gonna be too bright. It's all of a sudden I just realized that that thing is like shining. Oh, we're so good. Okay, so yeah, so we're going to need to do an RA. And then we're going to have to undo that move, right? So we'll go ahead and do that now. And now that we're done with that, we'll go ahead and undo our setup move. Which, remember, these were our faces here. So we'll twist this one back here. And we'll go, boom, like there. And we should have these two pieces now solved. Now, if we look next, our next cycle to solve is the U edge and the I corner. Which we could see here. The this edge here is U, which is, as we could see from our chart there, is this here. So it should be the white green, which it is, and I, which is right here. So we would expect a red, yellow, blue, which we do. So how can we get this corner piece here and this edge piece up there? Well, the easiest way I could think of would be to just do an F prime to turn this face up, right? So then we would just shoot the corner piece here. And then we could just do an R wide too, or R, yeah, to get the piece from here to here. So now we're looking at a JA perm. So we would just go ahead and execute that. And then we would undo our setup move. And we see our corner piece is solved and our edge piece. And you would proceed like that through the remainder of the solve, and until you got to this breaking point here where you're done with both, and then you would just go ahead and finish your edge cycles there. But yeah, I hope that explains it. This video is already very long as it is, so I don't really want to continue the rest of the solve. Maybe I will post another video, or maybe I'll just transcribe or put in the notes in the full notation for the example solve, or at least the setup moves and the PLL and then the undo setup moves. Maybe I'll do something like that. But anyways, thank you so much. I hope you learned something. And yeah, peace out.